Hello and welcome to our first day of South by Southwest EDU 2023. I'm your host, Kari Byron. This is the official South by Southwest EDU Studio, and I'm really excited to be here this year. We've got a terrific lineup of guests stopping by the studio this week, including legendary architect Frank Gehry, Olympic figure skater Christy Yamaguchi, Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona, and a whole lot more. We'll be back throughout the day and every day of the conference talking with some of the education world's most fascinating people. You can check out our daily schedule of interviews in our website at schedule.sxswedu.com/2023. Our first guests today are here at the South by Southwest EDU to talk about a very hot topic at this conference: teaching and learning in the age of artificial intelligence. Please welcome to the South by Southwest EDU studio, John Bailey, who is a visiting fellow from the American Enterprise Institute, Terah Lyons from the Stanford Institute for Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence, and Cameron Wilson from Code.org. Hello, guys.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Welcome as the first guests to the South by Southwest studio. Okay, so John, let's start with an exploration of the promise and perils of AI and ChatGPT. Can you tell us where we are today in terms of AI and education, and where's it being used and what for?
Oh gosh, a lot of questions.
Okay, so it's like three-in-one questions, but I'm super excited about this topic.
I can tell, it's great.
Just talk fast.
No, I'll talk very fast. Well, so ChatGPT is an example of these large language models of artificial intelligence that can take a text prompt and generate different types of text. And so you're seeing it do creative essays, song lyrics, but in education, there's all sorts of ways this could be used for virtual tutoring, as a virtual teaching assistant. We see a lot of teachers using it as a way of developing lesson plans. So I've never seen a technology that has sort of scaled this quickly and has sort of captured the hearts and imaginations of so many different people. So I think we're right at the forefront. It feels almost like it did when the iPhone came out in 2007, that there were some limitations, didn't have an app store, but you could kind of see like this is going to change everything. That's kind of what this moment feels like right now.
I mean, ChatGPT only launched in November, but surveys have shown that more than half of students and teachers have already tried it. I mean, this genie is not going back into the bottle. How long before just everybody's using it?
Oh gosh, well, I think that survey was from the Walton Family Foundation. It found about 50% of teachers are using it, 40% like at least once weekly. I don't know if that's the speed at which this is adopted in education systems right now. I think it's only going to accelerate. Especially, I think some of the news too about OpenAI making its API available now means a lot of other education providers, tutoring providers, publishers can start incorporating this technology into their products. And so you're going to see a lot of smart tutoring, going to see a lot of intelligence added to publishing systems. So I think it's going to just accelerate.
I feel like, it's exploding. And I feel like schools are just scrambling to figure out how to manage it. Do you have that feeling as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone is, to be honest. It's not a phenomenon specific to the education sector. We're seeing this technology disrupt all sorts of industries in all sorts of ways. And I think one of the biggest things that John just pointed out, which is true here too, is that we don't even really understand what it could be used for. And how it can effectively reach its full potential. And that's going to unfold in front of us in the next few years, for sure.
I'm excited to watch. It's been fascinating. We've all been reading headlines, though, about ChatGPT that can pin A+ essays, passing medical licensing exams. How much of a problem is this for teachers and administrators to deal with?
It's going to require just a fundamental rethink of everything. I think John said that his reaction was the same as the iPhone. For me, it was the same as when I saw Google for the very first time. And you had this intuitive sense like, wow, everything is going to be, it's almost one of those things you said out loud, right? You didn't even say it in your head, like, wow, this is fundamentally going to change things. And partly the reason it's doing that is because it's just changing the relationship and nature of the student-teacher relationship. And we don't know exactly how it'll unfold. But I think one of the things we can do for trying to make sure that students really can take advantage of it and teachers can take advantage of it is understanding the underlying technology. Artificial intelligence is really just part of a broader field of computer science. And if we can get every student to learn computer science a little more and get it in K-12, I think we'll have a really good opportunity for students and teachers to really leverage this technology and use it for their futures.
Teachers already have to deal with the technology that's advancing so much faster than you can learn about it. I feel like of course, the positives are easy to see and how it can help education, but the aspect of cheating and falsifying has been something that all the teachers, at least at my kids' school, have been talking about. I know that the makers of ChatGPT launched a tool called AI Text Classifier. Maybe you can explain how that promises to distinguish between AI written text and tools like Text Classifier, how that and Google assignments can help them out in this aspect?
Yeah, no, I think the way some of these, and Terah could probably explain this too, but like the way some of these systems produce text leaves almost like a digital watermark. And so if that pattern can be recognized, then you can put essays through a system and determine on some sort of probability whether or not the system was generated by AI or not. So some schools are using it as a way of just to double check on whether kids are doing their homework or if they're outsourcing that to
So
GPT.
if they copy and paste, does that watermark stay with it?
It does in some ways. So, but it depends. Like you need a lot of text, so short answers it probably won't catch it, but some of the longer essays, it can catch it.
Yeah, it's a thing the field has been working on for a long time, trying to decipher basically using AI when AI has been used to generate content. And this is true in the realm that we're describing in education related to plagiarizing, but it's also true in the realm of the internet more generally when you think about content moderation challenges experienced by platform companies and social media organizations, falsified images circulating the web. It's the same kind of technologies apply here too.
I mean, big picture, it's moving so much faster than our ethics can keep up with.
Yes.
To figure out. I mean, what clues can parents look for to make sure their kids aren't cheating? Asking for a friend?
Cameron, any thoughts?
Generally this cheating question, I think we're at a point where we're trying to say, hey, how do I adapt the classroom so I'm focused on cheating? And I think the more interesting question is going to get to how do I adapt the classroom to leverage the technology so I don't have to worry about cheating? And that is really going to be utilizing the tools in the context of the classroom. And that's ultimately where we're going to get to. But the foundational understanding of whatever the subject is will be critically important for any parent to know, and that's part of do you really understand it? Do you really understand either computer science when you're generating code or history lessons? Do you understand the underlying concepts? And those are the types of things parents can look out for. And those are the things we'll need to focus on for the future because it's not going to generate entirely new programs for you, at least in the short term, or it's generating essays now, but you really need to have a way of getting at understanding the fundamental underpinnings of it and being able to discuss it among your peers in your classrooms. And that's a way of really trying to prove in a classroom that a student has retained that knowledge, even if they're utilizing the tool.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying even if you're cheating, you're learning, so it's all good.
I didn't say that.
I feel like
That's what I heard.
I feel kids writing crib sheets and then they learned the material that way.
Yeah.
Darn it, trying to be bad.
This is like Cliff Notes on steroids, right?
Yes.
So we just put Cliff Notes on steroids, and it really just changes the nature of how students are going to learn. And that's what we have to embrace. That's the true innovation.
I definitely
that's a
think
good
Cliff
point.
Notes on steroids should be the tagline underneath ChatGPT.
Well, I think one technological analogy here, which might not quite suffice, but sort of gets to the idea, is the advent of the calculator. Like we have these sort of supercomputers in classrooms that have emerged in the last 15 years. And I grew up using a TI-80, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And sometimes we could use them to test in class and sometimes not. But actually part of the skill set that we were developing was how to interact with this learning machine that we were using to understand calculus. And I think that's, it's not a perfect, it's not exactly in the shape of what these new large language models have brought to classrooms, I understand, but it is, I think, the point that you're trying to make, Cameron, that it's something to be integrated and embraced as a tool. It's something that as a subject matter aspect should be brought into learning, and there are going to be ways that pedagogy evolves around it, ultimately.
I mean, my number one in classrooms that I want people to learn is critical thinking. So if you're actually using the tools, you're still critically thinking, even if it's, how do I use this learning machine? How do I bring this into my classroom and make it an educational experience? So I entirely agree. I know that there's a growing number of school districts that are banning ChatGPT and AI. How can schools better understand how to utilize these technologies rather than just trying to stop it? Because that's not happening.
Yeah, I think we need a high-level discussion about frameworks around this. So the technology is moving so fast that it's going to get ahead of policy. Like it's just that's
like
the way-
everything.
Yeah, the way it is. And I think high-level frameworks of what do we expect students to know? How do we expect teachers to be able to use this technology? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? And it's going to have to be a high-level framework discussion on a global scale because we're all now competing globally. Like this is moving so fast. But to actually just go back to your point on critical thinking, actually I think there's a tremendous opportunity to unlock critical thinking and really to enable students superpowers around that subject specifically. So for example, in computer science, you're like, hey, why do I need to teach kids computer science? Because now ChatGPT can generate code, and that's true. But you still have to know underlying what's the code actually doing. And what it does is it allows you to build and create and design. And if you can design, that's higher level thinking that can really enable you to be able to tap into whatever your dreams are for an application. It allows you to really tap into that superpower and design applications using code and generating code.
I mean, let's face it, we are raising kids right now to do jobs that haven't been invented yet. I mean, I can see that being someone who can prompt the right conversations on
Yeah.
ChatGPT could be an entire job.
It's a new job. There are people advertising now for prompt engineers
Oh,
because
so that wasn't my idea.
no, it's a great idea. So it's because the prompts are. I mean, I think the way a lot of educators have experienced these are like sort of simple prompts, like write an essay or summarize something. But the prompts can be quite complicated, and some of the text to imaging ones are amazing. Like you can generate a character in the style of Pixar, or you can do it in different types of photography styles. But how you code that a little bit in the prompts requires a lot of specificity. So yeah, prompt engineers could be this new job on the horizon.
Oh, that's so cool. So the future of AI in education, what do you see the role is in the future years? What has you the most optimistic?
For me, well, so I think one of the challenges we've had in education is that it is a little bit of a hype that sometimes the technology has overpromised and underdelivered for teachers and for students and for parents too. This feels like the other way around. This feels one of the first times I've seen where technology is sort of outpacing our expectations for it. I think it's going to do amazing things for teachers. All this tedious tasks that teachers have to do that prevent them from actually working with students.
Yes.
I think these AI systems are going to help take that away and free up teacher time. I think we're going to see a lot of smart tutoring and teaching assistants for students. And also, I think this is going to be another tool in the toolbox for parents too. I was just working with a 6-year-old, my friend's son, and we were literally creating a children's book just with different types of prompts. And he would give it a different scene, and it would create a different scene, and then we'd create characters from it. I think it's all sorts of different ways that it's going to help parents too.
So when you say smart tutoring, so that's just a kid with the AI tutoring them. So are they asking questions from their homework? Is that how that works?
It could be asking questions. ChatGPT does it great. And actually, Cactus AI, I think a lot of these systems give great feedback. So a student can actually submit an essay and it'll give them feedback as to how to improve it or different areas, different language suggestions. So I think just having that kind of tool in the toolbox a little bit is going to help make students a lot better.
Yeah, as you sit and go through lessons, you can think of, I'm going through this lesson, I'm learning whatever this concept is, and you can have a AI tutor that's sitting alongside of you that you're putting in prompts to help you build out, whatever it is, the content, the skills and knowledge that you need to. Mm-hmm. So that'll be something that will allow for us to have, I think, truly differentiated instruction in a way that we haven't been able to do easily in the classroom, particularly at scale. These AI bots enable you to do things as a teacher that you just haven't been able to do before.
Mm-hmm. How many of you are parents? You're a parent, so
Yeah.
Have you been utilizing this in your home?
I have a lot, yeah, with my daughter, and my son's actually a computer science major, so he's at college.
When?
and I've been talking to him about it and saying, when you graduate, you need to understand this stuff because the field itself will be changed dramatically, the actual software engineering field. And then for my daughter, we've been utilizing it in a lot of different concepts. John talked about this parent relationship question, and you asked this question, like, how do you know if your student's cheating? How do you know whether they learn? Well, you can actually ask ChatGPT or any of the, like, hey, give me some assessment questions for my students on this topic. And then you can just have a discussion with your student to see, they really know this stuff. But teachers can do the exact same thing. And those type of assessment questions have been kind of hard to do. There's a whole bunch of other stuff you have to do around assessments and things like that. But those are the types of things that enables you as a parent to have a totally different relationship and to learn alongside of your student. And it's super, super fun. That's been my experience with my daughter.
I can definitely see how in the classroom that could help enable discussions as you go if you get to a place where you're sort of stuck, and it could break down teacher prep time, which that is the one thing we I can't pay the teachers more, but if I could help them in just a little way to give them a little more free time, because that is a 24/7 job. They wake up in the morning prepping. So if you can cut that down, maybe we can add just a little more delight back in.
I think that's I think the dynamic that Cameron's describing is what I'm most excited about. Just the widespread early exposure of these technologies to a whole new generation of people who are going to grow up much more deeply understanding it than any of us do, and helping shape it moving forward as participants in whatever new economy is being generated by this work right now. I think is really exciting. And at the end of the day, we all have to remember this is just math. It's really fancy math that humans themselves have created. So we're training the next generation of people right now to become more deeply invested in having a hand in that.
So the most technological advances are also accompanied by data breaches. Do you worry about the rapid increase of data identity theft as students sign up for AI? And should companies be prevented from, well, obviously companies should be prevented from collecting from children, but what safeguards do you think need to be in place for that?
I'd say generally you need to have privacy controls. Those are well established actually in federal law. That's around ed tech and signing up and things like that and for students. But related to AI, I think we're going to need guardrails, and that's the discussion around policy as well. And you've already seen issues pop up with this consumer use of AI in the past few months where technology companies needed to make rapid changes. Microsoft being the most obvious example of that with their Bing chat engine, made some quick changes and put in additional safeguards, and that's going to evolve over the next few months, and it'll evolve super rapidly as well. But that's part of the sort of framework discussion around policy where I think we need to get policymakers in a room having a discussion about what's the appropriate guardrails to put in place.
I mean, I think that also means policymakers either need to bring in some cyber natives or really sit down and educate themselves. I think a lot of our policymakers are not that deep into technology. I think that maybe we need a few more tech-based lawmakers out there.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah, the literacy challenge is a really big one in government, and at least when I was there, I worked in the White House during the Obama administration on these issues, and it was the first time the U.S. government started tackling these questions. And again, to Cameron's point, it seemed novel at the time. Now it's just sort of the water that we drink and the oxygen we breathe. These are consumer products in the hands of everybody that are being utilized in classrooms, among other settings. And it's really time for us to grasp how we think about effective regulation, legal structures around these issues, privacy protections, and the ethics challenges, which might not themselves be policy questions sometimes, but are deeply intersectional with them, are going to have to be considered by everyone who creates and uses this stuff. So it's going to be really increasingly important. It has been really important, but increasingly so.
No, I do not fear the AI because I know that there are no ethics and soul there, and they still need us to help them. So the robots will probably not take over the world. Skynet is not necessary. I mean, Skynet's already happened, right? Wasn't that like 2020? All right. So you obviously have government experience. Is this an issue that Congress should be a little more aggressive in addressing? I mean, what are some good solutions, local or state?
Yeah, I think so. I think frankly, at every level of government, we should be thinking about these issues. I know the federal government has started that process, and we're investing pretty heavily in research and development related to AI as a country. But regulation really has to come from the seed of legislation, as you mentioned, and And I do think there is widespread interest in Congress acting more proactively on these topics, and it's coming both from the sort of commercial sector in companies requesting that type of clarity and support from lawmakers, as well as from individuals interested in consumer protection issues and other aspects. So I think it's really critical, and we have seen a lot of, in the U.S. we benefit from the complexity and beauty of this federal system that we have. So at the state level, there's been a lot of interesting sort of creative lawmaking starting to happen in places like California and other states related to some of these applications. But it will require, I mean, to speak to all the points that we've made earlier, it will require more informed lawmakers. And I think part of what we're doing in training people on these systems now is again, growing that new generation of folks who are going to help support creating some of those rules in the future. And in the meantime, we need to make sure that we're being proactive now.
So you're basically saying you're a superhero because you're saving the world.
I'm not there.
Believe that.
I'm not there, but
It's so true. One of the interesting things about this moment is that usually you have CEOs begging Washington, D.C. not to regulate them.
Yeah.
And here it's the opposite. Here you have the CEOs of some of the world's largest companies and the ones actually leading on AI saying they need better guardrails and rules of the road. And so Congress has a huge role for that, but also so do governors and state legislatures. And they can't start. What I worry about is that the way this is accelerating is outpacing not only their understanding, but also their ability to kind of craft frameworks and other legislative and executive branch sort of authorities and principles in which to kind of guide some of this development.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so overall, what advice would you give teachers, parents, when they grapple with how education sector embraces and evaluates innovation like AI?
This is the most exciting time for education, is my takeaway right now. We just went through this kind of down for COVID, right? We're all worried about learning loss, teacher turnover. This gives us a really big chance to rethink a lot of things in education, and taking a step back and thinking about how that really changes the relationship between teachers and students is something that teachers, administrators, policymakers really need to do, and see it as an opportunity. And that's what my main point of advice is to think about this as a really key point in time where they can rethink things in a way they haven't done in a while. And that's what's so exciting about this. And I know there's a lot on the plate of educators. Seems like it could add to it, but in a lot of ways, I think this can address some big core questions and issues that have come up. So that's my thought right now.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And in fact, I'm going to go out with that. ChatGPT, how do I roll out this conversation? All right. John, Terah, Cameron, thank you all for being here. This was a fascinating conversation. Thanks for all the advice. I'm taking it home with me. And thanks all of you for watching. I'm your host, Kari Byron, and we will be back with a whole lot more from the South by Southwest EDU studio. So stay tuned. And don't forget, you can watch all of our studio interviews on the South by Southwest EDU TV app and on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/South by Southwest EDU. That's youtube.com/SXSW EDU.